Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tech in 10. It's a Thursday afternoon, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about new teams and just going through that. It's quite a hot topic at the moment with Microsoft pushing it quite heavily. So we thought we'd do a little webinar, about 10 minutes, and we're going to go through and just touch on some of the points that we've seen. And if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A button at the top and leave a question there, and we'll touch on those at the end. So let's get started. So what we're going to talk about is what's different with new teams and how it's going to make you work faster and increase your efficiency. So um, why new teams? Well, Microsoft rebuilt it from the ground up, so it's faster. They tried to simplify it and make you get access to things with less clicks, and being more flexible as well. So all good intentions, and that's why they're sort of forcing everybody to do it. And the sunset on being to use the old teams will be the end of March. So that's why it's important to get across what's happening with the new teams. So if you aren't on it yet, and you see the slider up on the top left, it's probably a good idea to try the new teams and get using that, because as I mentioned before, it is going to be forced from the 31st of March. Okay, so have a look at the try new teams and go through it. It's been available for a while. It wasn't at feature parity to begin with, so it has come a long way. So it's getting pretty close now. So all you need to do is flick the slider there and follow the instructions on screen. So a couple of the little differences that we've noticed is the classic teams is a good example. So with this one, you used to be able to follow people's availability. So in your chat messages, you used to be able to set notify me when this person's online. That feature's now gone away, and in new teams, you just pick up the presence from within the application. So wherever you happen to be, you can just hover over the person, and you'll see this slide out menu, which will give you a bunch of information about the person that you're wanting to contact within the organization. They've added the organizational chart to this. Small businesses probably don't really need this, but for larger organizations, it certainly makes sense. But they're showing out the organization flow from here and who people usually communicate and work with quite a bit. So that could be quite valuable. It's managing teams has changed a bit. So who's members of teams and who's accessing it. So previously you used to have to go into the channel, you'd manage the channel and control it that way. Now you do it through managed teams. So the process is slightly different. It's pretty close to the same, but this one probably falls into the bucket of they're trying to do things in less clicks. So that's one little change that being the customer driven IT side of things, no longer do IT control the permissions. This is how organizations control the permissions. So it's a very important one to know. Next, we go into the OneDrive app. So this has changed slightly. They're trying to bring as much into that single pane of glass with new teams as possible. So there is a slight difference there for what you could use in OneDrive before and what's visible in new teams. And it should show you some of the recent work. So it's a change of workflow, but if you do need to use Teams or use it a lot, then it might be worth having a look at that one. Now, notifications have changed a little bit. So previously with the old version of Teams, the behind the scenes, the notifications would actually be delivered by Windows, whereas they've now rewritten that and it's all native within Teams. So it's all managed within that app, which means that you can control that all through there. Makes it a whole bunch easier. There's another feature that's come out of the program, which was the save feature. So the ability to save messages and files, that's been removed from the new version of Teams. With classic, Teams used to do post-level notifications within a channel. Now users can no longer opt in or out on receiving those notifications. So slight change there in the notifications. And if you'd ever created a channel or a team before and you might have seen the wiki tab, that's now been replaced with the Notes app. So again, just a small change, but in the interest of moving things forward. There's a couple of little aesthetic changes that you can make as well. So the classic teams, you could change some themes and you've got the chat density settings there. Whereas now in the new teams, you can have it follow the operating system theme. So you can make your changes. They're slightly different, but it allows you a bit more control or less configuration needed if you've already done that within your Windows environment there. Got some settings in here in the new teams you can also change. So being able to control the auto start of teams if you want it to start. You can also change where content opens. So most of the time with teams, it defaults to opening the main window. But if you find that you got multiple things going on, you can also change the default to pop out into a new window, which means that you can have multiple chats open or different documents or threads of things that you're working on. So that's a handy little change there. And just the way that document libraries present now in Teams has changed. So it used to be the Files tab on there, and then you would just see the library, but it's changed now to sort of pop out what is an embedded SharePoint app that just looks and feels a little bit differently, and it shows you the in channels and insight library there, which is slightly different. Now, one thing that you can do from here as well is you can see the sync button there. Is that if you like to work on it within Windows or on the Mac in Finder with the files, you can sync it down using the OneDrive client to your PC. So that can be quite handy as well. Some of the shortcuts and the things that we often use day to day have changed. So these are the shortcuts that you can use. They're quite handy. So this is from the search bar that's at the top of the main screen. So if you haven't used that yet, I would encourage you to. If you want to get that up really quickly, go to searches, Control and E together, and that will bring you up into that box. And from here, you can search for content, you can filter the searches and control them a lot more powerfully with the new teams. But you can also do things like /call, /DND, /BRB. So you can set your statuses through there as well. And you can see down a little bit lower, if you've got some apps installed within Teams, you can also trigger things from there using those as well. Now, the most important part is obviously GIFs and emojis. So it's become a lot more rich in the experience. So you can react to chat messages with different emojis than the standard 3 or 4 that you used to. You can do the whole library now. If you've ever seen the emoji there and you agree with what is already there, when you click on that, it adds another one and adds your response to it. So you don't have to go through and find it, which is quite handy. But this is one of the frustrating things that annoyed me very early in the new team's experience is you couldn't find GIFs. So what they've actually done is they've re-added it through that period of testing, and now it's located under the emoji sections in the chat messages. So very important that we're able to access those for productivity purposes. And speaking of productivity, if you do collaborate with other companies that use Microsoft 365 and Teams, you can also now, through a better experience, be a guest of those organizations. So you can see a couple of green check marks there, which I've just blurred out the organizations for privacy reasons, but you can easily click between those and it takes seconds rather than full log out switch. And that used to take 30 to 60 seconds. So that experience of collaborating with external parties is a lot easier now. So if you are doing that, I would encourage you to have a look at that as well. Right, so that's just breezed through that now. So we're on to the Q&A. So if anybody does have any questions that they would like to pose, I'm just going to jump into that section now so that I can see some of them and hopefully answer any questions that come up. So one here that we've got, how does the new Teams version address common user feedback and requests from classic Teams? So Microsoft try and get as much feedback as they can to develop it and integrate it. They obviously the happier people are with the product, the more likely they're going to use it. So the introduction of forwarding messages in chats is a good example of them adding a feature that was useful. So they got to forward from one chat to another. And I think with the re-architecture of Teams, it allows them to do that development more quickly and add those features. So they've rebuilt the structure that allows them to add that quite a bit. So is spell check working within the new Teams client now? That's a good question. I believe that it is, or I've certainly experienced it fixing up some of my errors, I guess. So that should be there. That should be built in native. If it's not, I'll definitely circle back to that. How does the new Teams version prioritize security and data privacy compared to the classic version? On this front, I don't think there's much of a difference. They all maintain the standards, and the threats more come from probably a back end perspective, generally speaking. So there's probably no real significant difference. It's still maintaining that high level of security. Okay, so is the new Teams client faster than the current one? Yes, absolutely. It's faster. Observed it using less resources as well, which means that you got the ability to run more tabs if you need to for all the apps that we run. So they've rebuilt it from the ground up, and the experience does move a lot more quickly. It wasn't always like that. So if you have used it in the beta phase or the earlier phases while they were testing, then it has changed. So I'd encourage you to come back to it if you didn't feel that way initially. Okay, so how does new Teams version cater to users with accessibility needs or preferences? So I think this is quite core to what Microsoft do as far as their inclusion goes. So they're trying to make it accessible to all users, and that new Teams version does incorporate keyboard shortcuts and screen reader support and high contrast modes that will help enable some people that might have challenges that those features address. The users that also customize that more through the settings. So that's quite good. It is possible that you can. Is it worth on different apps that can add it to your Teams and workflows? Yeah. So there's there's so much more that can be added to Teams to make it very much a single pane of glass. That's what Microsoft wanted to be. It's very difficult to do that when it was slow and clunky like it was with the older version, but it is seeming to get better. But there's lots of different things that we might touch on in future webinars about how you can utilize workflows and whiteboard and bolting in YouTube videos and sharing that content. And also meeting best practices is something that's on our radar as well. So let's just check. I don't think we have any other questions at the moment. So thank you all for joining. It was hopefully that was valuable. If you've got any feedback, please get in touch with us. Phone number, email address, phone number, and website are there. But yeah, please reach out if you've got any questions. Otherwise, that is all we have for you today. Have a good one. Thank you.